Welcome to Mr. Jad Reacts and Ting and Ting and Ting. I'm Mr. Jad, back with another video for you, back with another reaction, and we're going to look at the rise of Serbia as a tennis powerhouse. Okay. Uh, to be honest with you, I used to watch more tennis than I did basketball back in the day. I mean, Billie Jean King, Chris Evert Lloyd, Steffi Graf, Becker, Noah, Corners, McEnroe, Agassi. Now, the list goes on and on. I watched them all play and thing. I think the last time I've actually paid a whole lot of attention to tennis too was Nadal. I just haven't been paying attention as much as I have, as much as I used to. But let's go ahead and YouTube and simmer and check the vibe out here. See how Serbia became a powerhouse and thing.
The year is 1999. While the tennis world tunes into Roland Garros to bear witness as Andre Agassi achieves the career Grand Slam following an unlikely 2-sets-to-love comeback, or celebrate Steffi Graf's 22nd and what proves to be final Grand Slam title victory, the events pose only as a mere distraction to the graphic imagery and broadcasted horrors emanating out of Eastern Europe. This is the Republic of Serbia, and in 1999, the people of the fractured region were grappling with an incessant aerial bombing campaign carried out daily, across the country, by NATO, whose actions themselves were in response to the humanitarian crisis incited by the Yugoslavian forces' bloody campaign to assert control over the disputed region of Kosovo. A nation rocked to its core by decades worth of warfare and economic collapse. How is it that from the ashes rose a #1 ranked player, and then another one, and then another? And then another. What many consider to be one of the greatest recent generations of tennis talent, men and women whose childhoods and core developmental and training periods were seemingly eclipsed by the overarching essence of despair and destruction taking place in front of their very eyes. Most of course know the general backstory of players such as Novak Djokovic, but few actually understand the deeply complicated history of Serbia and how the nation for decades laid the seeds for players to eventually succeed regardless of the incredibly high and seemingly impossible barrier of entry. So did Serbian tennis flourish despite the adversity, or because of it?
A combination.
Throughout tennis's open era, there have been numerous short-lived eras of unquestionable dominance showcased by certain countries due to a variety of factors. And by the late 2000s into the early 2010s, many observed that Serbia had begun taking reign over the sport's top ranking spots and title victories, a country far smaller and poorer by comparison to those listed. And as mentioned, Serbia at this point was not even a decade removed from a gruesome war that both figuratively and literally reshaped the country. So, what was their secret to success? Well, Djokovic himself opined at one point that Serbian genetics likely played a large factor, or perhaps, as he joked on another occasion, that it was either the water or the mountains. While no universal truth exists to possibly answer such a complex question, a simple map could be the first key to better understanding the framework that characterizes the Serb mindset. Now, the area in question is the Balkan Peninsula, a geographical section of Eastern Europe.
I've noticed there's a lot of YouTube videos trying to decipher the mindset of Serbians. It's crazy, in sport. They did it in basketball. Now we see it here in tennis. And I tried to find something in water polo, but I couldn't. And I really want to because I've never watched water polo before. But, they come on so strong in basketball and so strong in tennis and even track and field that everybody's like, what's going on here? Why is this small country in comparison to the big ones that are always winning coming on so strong? And they're trying to figure it out. Could it be what they all been through, created a determination, triumph over adversities, where they were, they was raised? Was it genetics? You know what I mean? They just try to figure it out. It's just crazy to watch.
Named for the Balkan mountain range that runs through it. Serbia is located here, and this greater area as seen today is comprised of numerous small to medium-sized countries. Until very recently, however, the map looked like this. These now independent nations were for years a state unified under one name, Yugoslavia. We'll get back to Yugoslavia, but you may recall that predating this configuration, the Balkan region had been conquered and held for centuries by the Turks, a land which before that was part of the Bulgarian Empire, and before that the Byzantine Empire, the Roman Empire, so on and so forth. A summary, in fact, that hardly scratches the surface on the insane, almost annual rate of ownership and border changes the region has undergone over the past few thousand years. Belgrade itself, Serbia's capital, holds the unfortunate distinction of having been completely destroyed and rebuilt at least 44 separate times within the
Wow.
115 wars it's known to have played a part in.
That's crazy.
So with all that said, what's its significance to this story? Well, simply put, having been constantly divided for millennia by ever-changing cultural, ethnic, religious, and physical border fault lines, the resultant modern-day people of the now radically different Balkan states are noted both for their intense nationalistic pride and profound resistance to adversity and hardship, showcased, for example, by their ability to overthrow Ottoman rule and declare independence in the 1800s, or their fierce defiance against Nazi occupation during World War II. Now this is when sports really enter the picture. After liberating itself from Nazi rule in 1945, these Balkan republics in their second attempt joined forces to create a combined federation, Yugoslavia, whose power was held firmly by Prime Minister Tito's Communist Party. And as a result of a newly centralized communist government that modeled itself off of then-ally Soviet Union, a preeminent state-led sports system was launched and heavily invested into as a way to showcase Yugoslavian power, to ideologically rival other world superpowers like the USA despite possessing a population figure and GDP that were but a fraction of the size. Within just years, stadiums, swimming pools, playing fields, and more were constructed throughout the country, with the government financing the setup of new sporting and physical culture associations, declaring as a national principle that sport should now be the cornerstone of the youth's entertainment and leisure activities. Though communist policy had initially labeled tennis as an elitist sport and thus discouraged development of such facilities throughout the new country, the defined formation in 1945 of a tennis club in Belgrade, TK Partizan, and the subsequent construction of a premier tennis facility 7 years later to host the team made TK Partizan, and the Republic of Serbia in particular, a long-standing future hotspot and incubator of tennis for the entire nation.
See, that's the thing, man. It just didn't happen. This is years of developing, you know what I mean? It's the same thing that I saw in the basketball thing, you know? A lot of people don't know the history of the years of how they developed this stuff, you know? It just seems like they come from nowhere, but it's hard work, dedication, and pride that builds stuff up, you know what I mean? Nobody comes from just, oh, all of a sudden, yeah, they're great. No.
Just as the country began embracing its new sporting identity, however, in 1948 Yugoslavia broke away from the USSR and its Soviet bloc sphere of influence, shedding away its all-encompassing Soviet-style government in favor of a far more relaxed, decentralized one. Instead of weakening the new sports system, though, it supercharged it. Sporting associations, equipped with a communist mindset yet the freedom to now manage themselves, were able to develop, grow, and thrive independently from the political pressure of the central sporting body. And the athletes now had the autonomy to change their status from amateur to professional, allowing them to financially profit from their performances. What resulted from these unique policies was nothing short of a Yugoslav sporting golden age. The national handball, water polo, and basketball teams experienced unprecedented success, winning a multitude of European and international championships and were generally regarded amongst the best in the world, despite the latter sport being relatively unknown to the country before World War II. When accounting for all sports, a total of 87 Olympic medals were won over a 70-year period. And while the success was of course attributed to the country as a whole, the playing talent emanated particularly out of the Serbian, and to a lesser extent Croatian republics, two lands that gave birth to the region's first true tennis stars, Goran Ivanisevic and Monica Seles. Though sporting and athletics had firmly supplanted itself as the basis of Yugoslav society, the country's foundation itself was once again beginning to crack, ultimately shattering when a deadly civil war broke out in 1991. A proper understanding of that
Wow. That's a name I haven't heard in freaking years, Monica Seles. And I know the other guys. Yeah, I know his name too. I don't remember him playing, but Monica Seles, I remember watching her play. But that's crazy. I haven't thought about
conflict is beyond the scope of this video, so if you're interested, I highly recommend you check out Johnny Harris's video essay covering it after we're finished up here. Link to that in the description. But after 8 years of incessant and horrific warfare, a fractured Yugoslavia that just now consisted of Serbia and Montenegro then became the target of a years-long aerial bombing campaign carried out by NATO, further crippling a nation already on the brink. Somehow though, in the midst of all this chaos, was a generation of Serbian children that would grow up to dominate a sport typically reserved for the world's wealthiest, despite a lack of access to equipment, facilities, or many times basic human needs. How did they defy the odds? While we now know that Yugoslavia crucially set the stage for sporting success, as did Serbia itself for tennis advancement, in particular with the tennis clubs, but as the following may suggest, war might have acted as the final catalyst to ignite future Serbian domination.
Our mission is clear: to demonstrate the seriousness of NATO's purpose. This is not war in the traditional sense. Serbia's air defenses are strong. It could decide to intensify its assault on Kosovo.
If it does, we will deliver a forceful response.
In 2016, world number 1 Novak Djokovic went live on Facebook, streaming from a cell phone what appeared to be him and family wandering through a desolate wooded area and stumbling upon an old wall that they proceeded to hit some tennis balls against. In a twist reveal, Novak went on to explain that this was no ordinary wall. It was the backboard he had hit his first ever tennis balls against as a toddler, and that the deserted land he stood upon had actually been the former site of the Kopaonik Tennis and Ski Resort. You see, the emergence of the Yugoslav Civil War had already made life difficult as a prospective Serbian athlete. Future doubles number 1 Nenad Zimonjić recalls in the early 90s that due to Serbia's role in the conflict, we had embargo and sanctions. We could not compete as juniors. It was difficult to get visas to travel. But then, the bombs started dropping, every day throughout the country for over a year, crippling or outright destroying most facilities like Kopaonik. Instead of folding operations, however, the parents, coaches, and children whose prospects now amounted to little else resolved only to push harder. Djokovic at the time was under the tutelage of Jelena Gencic, the same coach, as it turns out, who brought up Selic and Ivanisevic. Together, they were constantly jumping from one training site to another depending on where NATO forces had dropped bombs the previous night, as Gencic predicted that they wouldn't bomb the same area 2 days in a row. Initially fleeing to bomb shelters when warning sirens blared and the sounds of explosions echoed in the distance, Novak soon elected to stay outside and continue practicing regardless, pushing on together even after Gencic's sister had been killed in one such bombing. Other players fared similarly. During the harsh Serbian winter, Ana Ivanovic and Janko Tipsarevic had conceded to play tennis in the only structure available, a converted indoor swimming pool that had been drained to save money. The courts were not regulation size, and cross-court rallies and wide serves were prohibited because the pool walls made the shots impossible to return. On the other side of the world, a teenage Jelena Jankovic was fortunate to have been living in Florida by the time the bombings began. However, her father, brothers, and friends remained in Belgrade. Tuning in to CNN coverage of the war every day and recognizing the damaged buildings, she began to lose significant weight and spent much of that period crying when not on the court, unable to play tournaments for a stretch of time due to the stress. While many in Serbia, like Tipsarevic, decided to stay and tough it out, others like Djokovic and Ivanovic had little choice but to eventually leave for international academies elsewhere in pursuance of quality training and junior tournaments. This, of course, came at a steep cost. Djokovic's parents, for example, took out risky, high-interest loans.
There's something about leaving where your family and stuff and going somewhere else to do that that really, really pushes you to be number 1 at something. To do your best. To let everybody know, hey, I'm here. So them having to leave and stuff like that, especially with the circumstances. Now we know why they're number 1.
A near 15% annual interest rate to cover their son's training, a gamble that would have financially ruined the family had Novak's career been unsuccessful. Conversely, though Ivanovic had found a sponsor to cover her training abroad, she later claimed during this period to have lived in a constant fear of being financially dropped in the event of any loss or setback. Recalling this pressure-filled, back-against-the-wall time period for all players in a 2015 interview, Djokovic references Serbia's aforementioned history and cultural mentality as the key to his compatriots' ability to overcome adversity. You have these psychological factors that have affected many Serbian generations, the tough times and wars and so forth, and we've had to fight for each day. I think that's something that strengthens us mentally. The Serbian language, in fact, possesses a word not present in other languages that specifically defines this mentality: inat. Derived from the Turkish word meaning persistence, it takes on a deeper meaning in Serbian, literally translating to doing something in spite of the consequences. The reckless desire to touch something purely because it comes with a sticker saying "do not touch." The immediate compelling feeling to do something because it's forbidden. For a country that was openly under daily attack in 1999, inat was not to take cover in bomb shelters, but to openly wear shirts with targets emblazoned on the back, to host fun runs in Belgrade that garnered record attendance numbers, And for tennis players, to train in the worst possible conditions with very little resources, yet possessing absolute conviction that they would overcome the odds. And that they did.
Wow, that's a crazy story. But understandable. When you come from tough situations, man. And even if you don't become famous tennis player or famous this or that, you have is a sort of strength of understanding and determination that most people will never understand, never get. And even if it's like this is on a major scale here, it happens on a minor scale too. Like you come from a tough family situation, living in a richer country, and to overcome is the same thing to a certain degree, not to the same degree, but to a certain degree. You overcome, and you have that determination, and you have that pride. There's a reggae song, "I'll never give up my pride," and that's that drive. You know what I mean? And of course, too, genetics have a play in it, but I think a lot of it is mental. They just like push and just strive and head for the hills, man. Climb that mountain. You know what I mean? Hey, this was very informative, and not so much in a national kind of way or a regional kind of way or anything. Just the human spirit. This just shows human spirit there. You understand what I'm saying? Because you could say the same thing for like Africans or of other people, we're not that different. You understand what I mean? We come from tough times and we like, oh, we're gonna hunker down and do the vibe. Boom, there it is. As you know, on this channel, I like showing that, we all human, we're not that different. And though we may came from different hardships and circumstances, as a human being, we react in a certain way. You understand what I mean? And of course, too, if the genetics is there, if the intelligence is there and everything, boom, there you are. You know what I'm saying? I hope this was informative to you, man. I hope so. Y'all take care of each other, and let's try to bring some peace to this world, okay?